Hilchis Meiser Perik Achadoser. Now the din is you're not allowed to sell tevel. That we learned earlier. Ein mechnas hatevel in Perik Vov Halacha Vov. We learned Ein mechnas hatevel erla letzerich. In other special circumstances, let's say you have someone that mixed up his tevel with chulin, and Mamela he wants to be mesaken his tevel with other tevels. He has to buy tevel. So in certain circumstances you're allowed to sell tevel, but generally you're not allowed to sell tevel. Beneged Demai, so we're going to learn that to an Amoritz you're never allowed to sell Demai. Mashenka to a Talmud Chacham in a certain Eifen, it depends. Certain types of sellers are allowed to sell Demai. That's what we're going to learn here. Perek Achadoser. Osir limkiras ad-Demai la-Amoritz eilishleach li-Demai. To sell Demai to an Amoritz or to send the Demai is absolutely Osir. Mipnei shu misayeh lazel lechel davar Osir. Because we're chayshish that he's going to eat the Demai, and Memela we're being Messiah to eat a davar Osir. Aval moichrin u'mishalchen eisi le-Talmidei Chacham. If you're selling it to a Talmud Chacham, that's Beseder. To sell Demai or to send it to a Talmud Chacham is Beseder. Why? She'ein Talmud Chacham oichel at she'aser et she'adiyah adam neman shezeh muser. So Mela, the fact that you're selling it to him, so Talmud Chacham, even if you tell him it's Demai the Chavada Klor, Masha'inkin, even if you don't tell him, so in other words, he knows that the din is that you're allowed to sell Demai to a Talmud Chacham, so Mela, so he won't assume that it's Muser until someone tells him Adam Neman that it's Muser, or he'll be Maser himself. Now this din that you're allowed to sell Demai to al Talmud Chacham is not every seller. That's halacha base. Kol ha-mashpiyim b'mida gasa. There's those that sell in large amounts, kegin asitenis, which are wholesalers, umechri tvua, again, people that wholesale, that sell tvua in larger amounts, is muter limkeres ha-demai u'l'shalche. So this heter that we said before, that you're allowed to sell Demai to a Talmud Chacham, or to give Demai is, and to a Talmud Chacham, not to a Amoritz, is only when we're dealing with people that sell b'mida gasa. Mipnei, why? Mipnei sheim esifan al amida, because since they sell in large amounts, so they always add more to what they're selling, and Mamela they're not really earning so much. So therefore, his kinu chachamim sheyeh lekech ezesh nishtalchu lehu amafish ma'aseh Demai. So no, that was the takana. The takana was, since they're not really earning so much, because it's like a wholesale and they're also adding to the amount, so therefore the buyer or the recipient should get the ma'aseh. When you get a recipient, l'chura l'maynaf community, if you're getting a recipient of a large amount or a small amount, so they already made one din. In other words, the ikar din was for the buyer and the seller. Whereas if someone is selling at a wholesale and he's going to have to be mafresh demai, so it'll be a loss for him. And since he's not really earning so much and he's adding to the amount, so therefore the Chacham instituted that the buyer should get it. And once they instituted the buyer, when he's selling a large amount, so al derezeh when he's giving a large amount. Aval hamoidedim b'mida daka, those that sell smaller amounts, they sell smaller amounts, is hail v'hamecher mistaker, since the seller is earning money, because when you're selling smaller amounts, so you don't have to really add that much to the mishkal, in other words, you sell more of an exact amount, and therefore you earn more money. So therefore, who mafresh? And therefore, v'leyimker v'leyishalach ele mesukin. There's nochamal. Tevel, you're not allowed to bechlal, generally you're not allowed to sell or send away tevel, even if the lekech knows about it, and you make up with him. So even though we had a halacha earlier, also in Perek Vov, where over there they were discussing if they made up, and they're arguing what was the deal. So, but from deswegen, the Radvaz writes over there that lepel, even if you make up with the lekech, you're not allowed to sell him demai, you're not allowed to give him demai. I'm sorry, you're not allowed to sell tevel, and you're not allowed to give tevel. That's by tevel, you're not allowed to, unless special circumstances, like we said in Tnei Tzerich. But generally, even if you tell him that it's tevel, you're not allowed to sell it. You're not allowed to sell it, you're not allowed to give it. Mashenkin ben ged demai. So if you're a person that sells smaller amounts, or you're sending a smaller amount, so then also you're not allowed to. Demai as well. Masha'inkin, when you were dealing about people that are sell b'mida gasa, sitoinis, and mechri tvor, so then they're allowed to sell to a Talmud Chacham, not to an Amoritz, because an Amoritz is a concern that they're going to use the demai, they're not going to be mafresh, but to a Talmud Chacham, someone that sells b'mida gasa, he could send to a Talmud Chacham. Now, halacha gimel v'kama hi mida gasa. What's considered mida gasa? So biyavesh means chatziso, a chatziso of produce. That's called a mida gasa. Ubelach is mida shemarzeke shava dina me'esa davar alach. We're not talking about the amount of how much liquid it is. In other words, we're dealing with a mida that would cost a dinner. In other words, the worth of a dinner of that davar lach, that's considered midagasa, and when you sell that or you send that in Dmai, you're allowed to do that to a Talmud Chacham, as long as there's no concern that the recipient will eat Dmai. The person will go ahead and be mafresh before he eats it. Halacha Dalet, Sali Zeisim va'anovim v'kupa shel yerek. If you have baskets of Zeisim and Anovim or kupa shel yerek, so the chiddush over here is that there's no exact amount. In other words, you're not really selling an exact amount. There's avol pishu meichen achsera. So in other words, you're not selling an exact amount. You're just filling up the basket. It's maybe not full either. Because it's not an exact amount. It's nevertheless asur l'meichen d'mai. Now, if it would be the share of a chatzisah, so then it's brought down to Achreinim that you would be able to, because it's not worse than we said before. Because the Rambam holds, even though the Lashon Rambam is that kol hamashpiyim b'midah gasa kegen asitenis, but the Rambam holds also lav dafka sitenis. In other words, even if it's a machlekes about it, even if a person that normally sells smaller amounts, and now he's selling a larger amount, so he could also sell or give away dmai when he's giving a larger amount. So over here, these salis esim vanovim, we're talking about that they're not a chotzisah. If it'd be a chotzisah, you'd be allowed to, if you're giving it to a Talmud Chacham or selling it to a Talmud Chacham. But over here, it's a lesser amount. There would be a svara that since you're selling it achsera, therefore you'd be allowed to. So that's the chiddush, you're not allowed to. Halacha hey, Amar echad mehem boy unesaken apeiros elu. So you can have a scenario where you're not supposed to give him demai, and memela, so really the moicha should be doing all the hafroshes. You can have a scenario where he's allowed to give the demai and sell demai. So memela, really the lekeach should be doing all the hafroshes. But the lepel, they spoke to each other and they said, let's do it together. Bei unesaken apeiros elu. I'm buying from you, I'm getting from you. Let's be unesaken apeiros elu. Is bein shahoya mecher bedaka ebegas, regardless of who really should be the one, without like making any deals, who should be the one that should be mafresh meiser, who should be mafresh dafroshes, is nevertheless, is the rule is hamoicher mafresh trumas meiser. The moicher is the one that's going to be mafresh the trumas meiser. V'halikeh, we're talking about d'mai, and v'halikeach is mafresh meiser sheni, and v'dover zeh t'nai beznu, which is similar to what we learned b'negeh the poil, that the poil is allowed when he's eating with balabayas, so the trumas meiser goes on the cheshbon of the balabayas, masha'enki, the pidyon of the meiser sheni, that goes on the cheshbon of the poil. So it's the giver and the recipient. There's the balabayas is the one that originally owned it, and now the poil is getting it. So the poil gives the meiser sheni, and the balabayas, he's the one that gives the trumas meiser. Halacha vov. Chover va'am ha'oretz sheyorshu saviyim am ha'oretz. So what their father left over is demai. And again, you're not allowed to sell demai. So as yochel hu leimar, so the chaver can say to the amoretz, tulat chitim shebemokim pleini, vani chitim shebemokim pleini. It's basically saying that my Yerusha, we have a Yerusha, so l'churi you could say we all yarshin the whole thing, and now we're like selling our parts to each other. So that would be a problem. But mitzad the principle of Breira we say no. That mitzad Breira we say, this is my Yerusha, this was my chelik in Yerusha. That's part of the principle of prayer, to say that what I yarshin, that was really my Yerusha. It's not pshat. Half of what I have was really yours, and half of what you have was really mine. And I gave my half for your half, so then it comes out I'm buying it from you. The Breira is saying, no, it's not I have half of yours and you have half of mine. I have what I yarshin and you have what you yarshin. That comes with the principle of Breira. Now this din of Breira, we only say in a D'Rabbanan. In the Raisa, we don't say Breira. We discussed this already. In the Raisa, we don't say Breira. So over here, since we're dealing with the Isser of Demai, so therefore we do say Breira. Mele it comes out that the Chaver is not giving anything to the Amoritz. The Amoritz is yashning his chelik. He's the Amoritz, his father is an Amoritz, and he's yashning his chelik from the Amoritz. And Masha'inkein, the Chaver is yashning his chelik from the Amoritz, so he doesn't have to worry about the Amoritz, about his brother's chelik. Nachamol. Chaver v'Amoritz sheyorshu saviyam Amoritz is yochelu leimer tulat achitim shibmokim pleini, v'ani chitim shibmokim pleini, ata yayin shibmokim pleini, v'ani yayin shibmokim pleini. That's talking about when the dogma chitim v'chitim. So over there, Pastor Zogan Breira. Aval yemer tulat achitim v'ani seirim, or tal ata halach v'ani ayavish. You take the fresh and I'll take the dried ones. B'pnei shezem mecher demai. And those together of be'emes, each one yarshins all the chitim, all the seirim. So Mimela, since each one yashin all the chitim, all the seirim, so Breda could say, I got the chitim that I was supposed to get, and I got the seirim that I was supposed to get. Masha'inkin, if I'm giving away my chitim for your seirim, so you can't say I yashin chitim, you yashin seirim, because definitely each one yashin sai chitim and sai seirim. Elamai, I'm taking the chitim and you're taking the seirim. So the pshat is that I'm giving you my chelik in the seirim for your chelik in the chitim. So basically, I'm selling you d'mai. I'm selling you my chelik in the seirim for your chelik in the chitim, and that's not breda. That wouldn't work in breda. Breda is only a bimin echad. So memela, so that wouldn't be allowed to. So it would come out that the Talmud Chacham is the chaver is selling the maretz, his d'mai. Yeah, halacha zayin. And there's no problem in those, even though Lepel, we said before, you're not allowed to give away d'mai because you're being machshalim, so you're not giving him away anything. In other words, the pshat is, you're saying he's yashing it, he's yashing this chelik from his father. Halacha zayin. Mi shah yinesi yerek, and we covered all of masay, he's carrying yerokas, and it's covered all of masoy, it's heavy. V'rotza lahashtach mimeno al aderech, k'dei lahakum masoy, it's too much for him to carry, and he wants to throw it away. And it's not, he didn't give maisa from it. So the din is liyashlach ad sheyaser, he shouldn't throw it on the way until he gives maisa, because we're talking about something that was already nigmar malachta. If it wasn't nigmar malachta, so if he's mafkir, kedem shnigmar malachta, so it's takanat chayiv in maisa. Mashenkin over here was already nigmar malachta, he just didn't give maisa yet, so he shouldn't be mafkirit at sheyaser kedei sheli tehi takol l'ami yoresh echol neisa b'dmai. Because if a Talmud Chacham will find it, for sure he won't eat it until it'll be maser. Mashenkin over here, it's a takol l'ami yoresh echol neisa b'dmai. So memela you have to, so you have to first be mafresh shmais, and then you throw it to the side of the road. Halacha ches. Halakeach yerek min hashuk u'moshach. You go ahead and you buy a yerek min hashuk, and you made meshicha. Is afal pi sheli shokal. You didn't weigh it, v'lei modad, you didn't measure it, and v'lei nosen dom, you didn't pay for it. You just made meshich on it. Now we're talking about something that dom of you doing. It's not like you have to make up a price. The price is clear. And then the nimlach lahachzir lebalachanus. So now you decided you want to give it back. So the din is, since it was already yours, so you're not allowed to give back. So you're not allowed to give back d'mai. Memele leyachzir at sheyaser. You're not allowed to give back until you give and you give meiser. You have to give meiser for it. Now we had a similar halacha in the beginning of Perek Hey. We learned that al-keach peiris slushim lo echlom. So once he buys the peiris, so it's nigbul l'maiser. So even though, let's say, it wasn't yet nigbul l'maiser, because let's say the person bought it, and he didn't buy it al manas to sell it, he bought it al manas to bring it to his house, and the vayla wasn't nigbul l'maiser, which echad the shisha dvarim that we learned about in Rambam. But nevertheless, he since he paid for it, so it was nigbul l'maiser, even though he didn't make any meshicha. So here we're talking about he was mashach. Over there we're talking about that he gave the dom. Then over there it says hareisha lei nosen sadomim v'yebeir mineach beir mineach afilu kalayim kulei, and aval bishagamar buli belikach is lei nischayev laser. So over there he picked it up and he put it down. He picked it up and put it down. So and over there it says imhoy yirei shamayim. So then he's maaser. So you have to know the chiluk. Over there he picked it up and he put it down. So Vaistus, things weren't clear yet. It wasn't clear. He picked it up and put it down. So even though he made a Maisa Kinyan, but it was very clear that he could return it. Masha'inkin over here, Vaistis, he made a Mashicha Mamash, he made a Mashicha, and he needs maybe Rishus of the owner to give it back. And it was over there, it was obvious that when he takes it, he could give it back. He doesn't need like new special Rishus. So therefore, never really Mamash became his in the same way that it became here. So it's L'chur, you have to learn Pshat. I'm just saying to reconcile what says over here, that he's talking about he was lekeach yerek min hashuk and he was moshach. He already made the lekicha and he made the decision. He has it. Now he's giving it back. So over here he's not allowed to liyazer at sheyaser. Masha'inkan over there he was picking it up and putting it down, picking it up and putting it down. So over there it's only if it's a yirei shamayim he has to be mas. Halacha tes hamoitzi peiris baderech. He finds peiris in the road. Now the question is he allowed to use it? Now we're talking about peiris, which the Rashi says nigmar malachta. But the question is, if it was nikbul l'maiser. Now, it was nikbul l'maiser, it depends. If those peiros were harvested, al manas l'meichen b'shuk, so that's already was nigmar malach. So then it's already nikbul l'maiser, and you're not allowed to eat from it even achilas arei. Masha'inkin, if they weren't cut in order limker b'shuk, but it was al manas l'aviyim l'beisom, and chances are it was never brought to the bias, so memela, so they weren't really nikbul l'maiser, so the vayla you're allowed to eat from it achilas arei. That's the issue here. Hamoitzi Peris Baderch. Im Reiv Machnissen L'Bateyim. So Memele, the Pashtus is these Peris were never Nikbul L'Maisa, so the while you're allowed to eat Achilas Aray, is Potter Melaser. Potter Melaser means you're allowed to eat Achilas Aray. You're allowed to eat it Achilas Aray. Shadayin L'Nikbal L'Maisa. However, V'im Reiv Machnissen Limker B'Shuk, so then it's Harei L'Dmai, so they're already Dmai. Memele, you're not allowed to even eat Achilas Aray. Mechtel L'Mechtel says also you have to be Cheshish that it's Dmai, and Memele, you're not allowed to eat from it Achilas Aray. You're not allowed to eat from it Achilas Aray. If you're Machnissen L'Beisei, so then you have to be Meiser. You have to be Meiser, and also you're not 100% sure that Meiser wasn't given. So you can't be Ma'aser Be'ifn Vadai, even if it's Reiv Machnissen L'Bateyim. But I'll call upon him, the issue over here is whether you're allowed to eat Achilas Aray. That's the way it's explained here. Yeah, the Radvaz explains. Now, not lon lo oichlon, you took it almanas to eat it. You picked it up, you found peiros, and you wanted to eat it. Lepel v'nimlach latzniya. Then you decided, no, I'm not going to eat it yet. Now, the question is, do you have to give meiser right now? We're talking about something that you have to give meiser. Is le yasha oisam achi yaser. Don't hold it in your possession until you give meiser. Why? Kedei shelei yehi takol lacher. And since it's something which we're talking about in a case that Reiv Machnissen Limker B'Shuk, and it's Demai, and you went ahead and took it, and Memele Be'emes, if you'd want to eat it, you would have to take Meiser, just you decided not to eat it. So when you take something, Almanas to eat it, so you made a Meiser Kinyan on it, and Almanas to eat it, and now you decided to hold it, so what you're supposed to do is right away be Mafresh Meiser, in order it shouldn't be a Takol. However, in other words, you really had no intention of eating it. You just wanted that it shouldn't get ruined. It shouldn't get ruined. So as hareza mutal l'sheisim etzlon, ad sheyirtze le'eichlon el'sheilchon el'meichron. And then v'yaser isn't minors. If you picked it up, I'm asked to keep it and to eat it. So then you have a chiyuv to give ma'aser, and you shouldn't. It could be an isra baltacher in giving ma'aser. Mashenkin, if you picked up something when a hefker and your intention wasn't almanas to eat it, you're not really sure what you're going to do with it, but you just don't want that it should get lost. You don't want it to get ruined outside. So since you didn't pick it up almanas l'knoison into a kinyan and almanas to eat it, it's not clear what you're going to do with it. So then at that point in time you don't become mechuyev la'aser, and you could wait until you make a decision what you want to do with it, and at that point in time you have to give ma'aser. Halacha Yudalev, Knivas Yerek Hanimtzaz Begina. We learned that there's the vegetables that you cut in the garden, so there's the parts of the vegetable which was like spoiled, which the gardeners cut off, and they just put it down in the garden. Then they bring the vegetables home, and then there's the part that the balabais cuts off, and that's not as spoiled as the stuff that was cut off in the garden. It's somewhat edible. It's not preferable. It's not the best part of the vegetable, but on the other end, it's not as it's still edible. So you're saying, Azoi, Knivas Yerek, Hanamsaz Begina, that cut off part of the vegetables that the gardeners cut off, which is very, very inedible. It's already not. It's kemat inedible. Is areze pturim and admai. It's patim and admai. It's not considered food which you mechuyev to give ma'aser for. However, v'shal balabayis and mtzaz babayis, so that even though it's knivas hayerek, but nevertheless that's considered food. And therefore, if you want to eat it, you have to be mafresh d'mai. Shal gabi ha'ashpa. What happens about the knivas hayerek, which is already al gabi ha'ashpa? So then b'chol makom muteres, because we could assume that if it's al gabi ha'ashpa, it's not really something which is edible. It's already more peshes b'yes, it says. Halacha yud beis. It's not to understand what's the chiddush over here. And the din is we have to take a look. Well, what's the matzav of the dvarim? Is it edible or not edible? I mean, you're talking about knivas hayerek, b'techa agina, b'techa abayis, al gabi ashpa. Let's take a look and knows what's the matzav. So we say no. B'techa agina, you don't have to be choishish. You don't have to stop being boidik. It's all spoiled. B'techa abayis, you assume that it's good, and if it's al gabi ashpa, you could assume it's not good. You have to have the tzir clear. Halacha Yud Beis. Hanesen lepundikis levashis levelefes. A person is staying at a home, in a hotel, whatever, and the seder is that he'd give the person his flour, the person that's running this pundik, the woman or the man that's running the pundik, he would give them the flour or his food, and they would go and bake it for him and cook it for him. Now the concern is you're giving food which is gemaisert, and that person is going to give you back food which is not gemaisert, food of namoritz. Now the question is, Sulachura, right now I didn't give Meiser yet, so the Svara is, let me wait till they give it back, and then I'll give Meiser. So if it was my original thing, so I'm giving Meiser, and if it wasn't my original, so I'm giving again Meiser. So why do I have to give twice Meiser? The answer is because if Lepel, you're giving something to her, if there's a concern, she might switch it. Now if she switches it, it comes out that what you gave, if you're not going to give Meiser from it, so it's going to end up someone else is going to be eating something which is not Moser. So you have to make sure to give Meiser of the food before you give it to her to make sure that nobody ends up eating Shlei Moser. Now when you get it back from her, you're not really sure you got back what you gave her. So you have to again give Meiser. That's the din. Hanesin lepundikis levashlei v'lefislei is ma'aser ushu nesin. He has to be mafresh Meiser from what he gives her. Why? Not because he's going to eat it, because not necessarily he's going to eat it. Or if it's for him, so he could wait till she gives it back to him. But over here, the reason is kadei shaliyah takola lacherim. In order, there shouldn't be a takola lacherim in case she gives it away to someone else. And he has to give Meiser from what he takes from her. There's a concern that she's going to switch. She's going to get from one person and another person, and she won't necessarily give back each person what they gave him. If a person gives it to his mother-in-law, whether or not he already married his bita, was already nesuyin, or ben sheiris, even if it was only erisin, he's giving it not stam to a pundikus, to a friend person, but he's giving it to his neighbor. He's giving them pas lefes or v'tafshel levashel eine cheshesh le'mishamayse v'le'mishum shvius. He doesn't have to worry that maybe they gave him something else. They're not giving him back what he gave them. So maybe it's not Moser, or maybe it's Peder Shvius. A mother-in-law, and Aldera Shchenta is not Chshuda Lachlef. When he gave her all the ingredients, in other words, he gave her the yeast that she needs for the dough, and he gave her also the spices for the Gdeira. But if he only gave her the basic ingredients and the spices or the yeast she's going to add, is Choshes Mishamaises, we're concerned that what she adds of the yeast maybe wasn't Mu'usr, maybe has to be Mafresh Meiser because of the yeast. And also there's a concern, maybe he's getting back something which is Sviche Shvius, which are Asr. Because Shema has Er Misviche Shvius, so he's not going to be able to correct it. Because Sviche Shvius is Asr, Midrabanan, Memela, so there's a concern. So Bekitzer, so in other words, if he gave her all the ingredients, we're talking about Nachmal, you give a Shviger, or your mother-in-law all the ingredients, or you give your neighbor all the ingredients, so then you assume that she's going to give you back all the ingredients that you used. Masha'enkin, if she has to put in some of her own ingredients, and we're not really sure what ingredients she put in. Halacha Yudgim. Hamoylech chitov letoichen amharetz. Someone goes and he comes to a mill, to a place where they're gonna grind his wheat, and he's giving it to an amharetz to grind it for him. Now the question is he going to get back the flour from the wheat that he gave him? And so the din is harei b'cheskos, and we assume that he's getting back the flour of the kernels of wheat that he gave him. She'eineh choshed la'achlef. There's no kshash that this toichen amoris is going to change, that he's not going to give him back the flour of the wheat that he gave him. That's if he gave it to a teichen amoris. Now, however, holichon l'teichen akum, if he gave it to someone that runs a mill that's a goy, so then we're afraid that maybe he didn't give him back his wheat, and he gave him back someone else's wheat. In other words, if he gives him back, the goy gives him back his own wheat, so there's no problem. Because a goy's wheat is not a problem of tumas and maises, because we'll soon learn the gon chov v'lei doganakum. So the goy, if there's no concern of the goy switching the yid's wheat for the goy's wheat, but over here the concern is that the goy is going to switch this yid's wheat for some other yid's wheat, and that other yid may be an amoritz. So when he gets it back, it's d'mai, because Shema hichlifon b'chitin amoritz. V'chein, that's din one. V'chein hamafked eitzel amoritz. Person puts a pikadon by amoritz, he puts him a sack of wheat, is also a rein b'cheskosim. You could assume when you take the sack week of bat, you're not going to worry that maybe the amoritz switched it, and now this wheat that he's giving me back is demai. She'eni choshed la'achlef ha'pikadon. So again, we learned that a pundikis is choshed. A pundikis was choshed. Masha'enken chamoisoi and alder is a shchentoi weren't choshed. Then we're learning an Amoritz is also not Choshut, not a Toichen Amoritz. If someone is running a mill, he is not Moritz. So we're not Choshut that he's going to be Machlif, this Chitim, the other Chitim. And Al Derez, if you put a Pikodin by Amoritz, he's also not Choshut. Mashenkin, a Goy is Choshut. A Goy is Choshut. Now, Amoritz, Sheim Mishtamish Bechanusi Shulchav, you have an Amoritz that's working in your store, and he's Dreing Zach, is Aval Pisha Chaver, is Yetziv and Nichtza, the Chaver is only going in and out, he's not there all the time. So Vimela, the Amoritz really had time to switch things over there, and maybe take things that belong to the Chaver and switch it for other things. And Vimela, he's not 100, he can't be 100% L'chura, that it's not, that it's Mesukin. But nevertheless, that is a mutter, Veinecheshe Shema Hechlef. Because since Sof Kol Sof, the Chaver is going in and out, so therefore there's no concern that maybe he switched it. Halacha Tezvov, Hamafkit Peresav Eitzolakum, is Harei Hen Ki Peresav Shalakum. So when he comes and takes back those peiros that he was a Pikotin by a Goy, it's as if he went ahead and got peiros from the Goy. The Chazak is that the Goy is going to be Machlef at Pikotin, so therefore you have to be Machmer as if this peiros that you're getting are not the original peiros that you gave him, but rather the peiros which you got from the Goy. V'heich dinam. Is im hoyu peiros shadayin lenigmar malachtam. If we're dealing with peiros shadayin lenigmar malachtam, and you went ahead and you gave a Goy a Pikotin of peiros shadayin lenigmar malachtam, and then now you went ahead and took it from the Goy, and v'nigmru b'yad Yisrael acher shalakach hapikotin. The Yid came and took back the peiros from the Goy, which was lei nigmar malachtam, and it was nigmar b'yad Yisrael. So the din is mafresh masreis of k'misha b'yanu, because that's the halacha. The halacha is if you buy peiros from a Goy, which was lei nigmar malachtam, and it was nigmar b'yad Yisrael, so memela is chayav b'maisos. It's chayav b'maisos. So memela, so that would be the din, because you're concerned. I mean, if it was yours, you also be chayav b'maisos. And if it was the Goy's, you also chayav b'maisos. So memela, you're chayav b'maisos. And before that, you don't have to give it because it was lei nigmar malachtam. So memela, there was no need to be mafresh maisos. Now, v'imhoyu peiros shehifke tvolim v'nigmar malachtam. If what happens if what you gave to him was you already yet nigmar malachtam, so you're giving him something which is nigmar malachtam. So the din is chayiv lahafresh. You have to be mafresh before you give it to him. Why? Because after you take it from him back, you have. In other words, if it would be the Goy's, and if it would be nigmar malachtam b'yad Goy, you would be potter, like the Rambam will say. But over here, there's a concern. Maybe the Goy wasn't machlef. So it was your peiros that would fall him, and it was nigmar malachtam, and now you left it by the Goy, and now you're taking it back from the Goy. Is chayiv lahafresh, you have to be mafresh, because shema leichlef hagoy. Ulefichach yiro lish amaises sheyafresh sofik. It's only going to be a sofik, because aval, im hif, that's, why is it a sofik? Because we're not really sure. Maybe it was yichlef hagoy, and maybe the Goy gave you his peiros. And if he gave you his peiros, which were peiros misukanim, so it was already Dugan Chavalei Ganakum, so Mela it's potter. So Bikitzer, if you give a Goy a Pikad Peiros Shenigmar Malachtam, and now you take it back from him, you have to be Masakin it, because maybe it's your original Peiros, and if it's your original Peiros, you have to be Mafresh. Avolim Hifkid Chulim Mitukanim, if you were Mafkid by a Goy Chulim Mitukanim, so now Einit Tzarech Lahafresh Klum, you don't have to worry at all. In other words, if you gave him something which was Chulin Mesukanim, there's no concern. Shafilu Hichlef Akums, what could be the concern? Maybe the Goy was Machlef and he gave you his? Is Pturim, K'mishim Barna B'Hilchas Trumis, the Gon Chavalei Ganakum. There's no concern. Because when you go to a place where there's a person that's grinding wheat, so there's a concern he's going to be Machlef, a Goy that's been grinding wheat, so he's going to be Machlef, your tfuah for someone else's tfuah. Over here, you're giving it to a Goy a Pikadon. There's no other tfuahs over here. It's either your tfuah or the Goy's tfuah. So if you got back your tfuah, you have to be mafresh meiser. If you got back the Goy's tfuah, so then you don't have to be mafresh meiser. So Memela Lepel, since it's possible you got back your tfuah, and it was nigmar malachtam b'yad Yisrael, so you have to be mafresh meiser misofik. That's if you gave him tevel, mashenkin. If you gave him chulim sukanim, so then when you take it back, it's perfectly all right. Either if it's the original, it's the chulim tukanim, and if it's not the original, so he gave you the Goy's tfuah. No, the Goy's tfuah is also part.